Intelligence without wisdom is like a very strong medicine mixed with poison, or an AR-15 fully loaded with one in the chamber and the safety mechanism disengaged. The classical example is that of a double-edged sword, with which one could slay one's enemy. But if one wasn't careful, one could also slay oneself. And so, what is an example of intelligence without wisdom? Well, for instance, we can use intelligence to develop new technologies. But if these technologies are not applied with wisdom, then they can be very dangerous. In general, we think we don't need wisdom. We see it to be something unnecessary. But that through intelligence alone, we can make the world a better place. For example, it is claimed that in order to save the human race and consciousness in the universe, then it is necessary for the human race to become multiplanetary. The notion is that we need to establish a colony on Mars, and in that way, then we are able to increase the chances of human civilization surviving into the future. But this is an example of intelligence that is lacking wisdom, because it is not guaranteed that by becoming a multiplanetary species, the human race will be saved from extinction. In fact, one cannot say with certainty that the race to colonize Mars itself could not be the cause for the end of human civilization. We can see this from the past, because the race for space was a major contribution to the tension of the Cold War era. And likewise, if different nations are competing for the resources on the planet Mars, this could also become a cause for further conflict. To give you an example, then we develop various technologies. There is the recent DART program that's been developed to research the ability to deflect asteroids that are in danger of approaching the Earth. The idea is that if we're able to detect an asteroid that's on a collision course with the Earth, we can save human civilization from destruction. But again, there is no guarantee that this technology itself would not be the cause for the end of life on the planet Earth. So for example, let's take our hypothetical colony on Mars. After several generations of mining resources on the planet Mars for the benefit of corporations on the Terran planet, they develop a grievance. They feel that they've been mistreated and are being used for their resources without getting a fair return. And although they raise their grievances with the Terran government, the Earthlings have no compassion for the Martians. They feel that they have the upper hand, and the Martians have no choice but to accept whatever conditions that the Earthlings set. And so, in order to get revenge, our hypothetical Martians decide that they're going to intentionally deflect an asteroid into a collision course with the planet Earth. Now, this might just sound to you like some kind of fantastic science fiction story, but there are many examples of exactly this kind of thing, where intelligence is applied without wisdom. It was claimed that all of our human problems could be solved by the development of atomic energy. The theory was that if we had unlimited sources of energy, there would no longer be any need for human beings to compete for resources. This is a perfect example of intelligence without wisdom, because it does not take into consideration human nature. The reality is that the development of nuclear technology has brought the human race the closest it has ever been to self-destruction. But 100% that was not the initial intention of the scientists involved. And it seems that when it comes to human nature, most scientists haven't got a clue. In the Buddha Dharma, there are taught to be two types of wisdom. There's the wisdom that realizes the nature of phenomena, and there's the wisdom that realizes the various manifestations of phenomena. And it is this second type of wisdom that scientists primarily dedicate themselves to understanding. It's a known fact that there are very few scientists who are interested in ultimate reality. Stephen Hawking famously said that there is no ultimate reality that can be understood outside of the context of model-dependent reality. And this is very similar in meaning to the statement by Nagarjuna that was made over 1,000 years ago, that there is no understanding the ultimate without first understanding the conventional. And without realizing the ultimate, then there is no liberation from samsara. And what Nagarjuna was saying is very similar to the statement by Stephen Hawking, that we are unable to conceptually grasp the ultimate truth of reality. And herein lies a fundamental difference between the modern scientific paradigm and the metaphysical presentation of the Buddha Dharma. But I didn't come here to talk about the ultimate truth. I came here to talk about intelligence that was lacking wisdom. So to give you another example, throughout history, then people have developed ideologies, for example, communism. We conceptualize a way in which we can improve the world. And this is often done in a way which lacks wisdom. And in terms of the Buddha Dharma, wisdom, for example, is understanding human nature, understanding karma, cause and effect, and interdependence. And when we say karma, cause and effect, it doesn't help to think about some mystical force or some kind of cosmic retribution, as if there was a Buddha up in heaven judging you for your misdeeds and punishing you. It doesn't work like that. Karma, cause and effect is the teachings on causality, that apparent reality rises out of causes and conditions. And a fundamental understanding of this is that if you act in a negative way, then it brings about negative consequences. And this is a really good example of how we get it wrong. An example of how we apply intelligence without having wisdom. And this is how previous ideological experiments have failed. For example, communism, or the National Socialist movement in Germany. Both of these movements were based on ideologies. And in these ideologies, then there is no place for karma. So for example, the National Socialists were inspired by the teachings on eugenics. They conceptualized a world in which there were races that were superior to others. But their position was not founded in scientific fact. Their belief in the preservation of a pure and superior race was a fallacy. In fact, the opposite is true. In order for humanity to survive, we require diversity. But for the National Socialists, they believed they needed to preserve their racial purity. But as we know now, then diversity is important, especially when it comes to resistance from disease. Now, they claimed that their beliefs were founded in science, but there was no proof of this. The reality is that their beliefs were founded on prejudice. It was prejudice and bigotry and resentment for others. And when we apply ideology and ignore the truth of karma and interdependence, the outcomes are always disastrous, as was clearly the case with both the National Socialist movement and communism. The Soviet Union failed. Not only that, but an incredible amount of negativity was perpetrated on innocent human beings in the name of communist ideology. It was the same for Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, and also Joseph Stalin. So these are all examples of how intelligence without wisdom is dangerous. Now we think we have learned from the past, but the reality is we never learn. We continually repeat our mistakes over and over again without ever learning from the negative consequences of adhering to our conceptual fallacies. At this very moment in Eastern Europe, then Russia is waging a war against Ukraine. And the reason for this conflict is because Vladimir Putin is applying intelligence without wisdom. In his own mind, he believes he is doing something positive. But through his ignorance, he cannot see that what he is doing is bringing about the demise of his own people and his own nation. And that's because his mind is corrupted by ideology or intelligence that is lacking wisdom. His fundamental belief is that democracy is a failed experiment, and that democracies weaken the ability of a nation to grow and prosper. And the reason why he is focusing his nefarious goals on his neighbor in Ukraine is because they are a former Soviet state that is moving in the direction of Western democracy that he sees to be so mistaken. Intellectuals and greedy men in positions of power look down on ordinary human beings who they see to be of lesser intelligence, and they never recognize that the consequences of giving rise to pride in this way will bring about their own destruction, like a double-edged sword. But there's something you should know. Some of the most powerful and influential men in the world are falling into just this sort of trap at the very moment. I am talking about the Silicon Valley tech giants and oligarchs like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Many of them are inspired by a new sort of ideology that believes the American experiment in democracy is failed and needs to be replaced by a new system. And not only does it need to be replaced by a new system, but that this needs to happen in a drastic and accelerated manner. They are no longer content just to have your money. Now they want your soul. Many of them adhere to the ideas of a blogger by the name of Curtis Yarvin. His belief is that modern democracy needs to be replaced by a technocratic monarchy, a system run very much like a corporation, at the head of which is a chief executive officer, like in megacorporations around the world. They point to the example of Singapore, a small city-state that is run in an authoritarian manner. But this is ignorance. This is extremely dangerous. And the reason why is that as long as a human being is afflicted by their negative emotions, like greed, hatred, jealousy, and pride, then there is always the chance that they will be corrupted by their wealth and their power. In fact, it's almost inevitable. You could start off with the greatest motivation in the world. The problem is, once you become a billionaire, powerful and influential, then if you still have your negative emotions, it's almost 100% certain that you will become radicalized by your greed. If you look at the way the sages of the past lived their lives, then they had no concern for the progress of civilization and lived like feral animals in the wilderness. Then they understood that the life to be led was a life of simplicity, and one that was never divorced from love and compassion. A life of non-violence, and a life where one guarded one's negative emotions. But we are intelligent. We don't need morality. We can figure it out ourselves. And if this planet is destroyed, then we'll just go off to another. This is the way of fools. You can build a rocket ship to travel to the furthest galaxy, but as long as you bring with you your anger and greed, ignorance, jealousy, and pride, then you will never find true freedom or happiness in liberation. And the entire reason why I go through all the effort to make these videos is because it is my sincere wish that you should find happiness and well-being. But you won't find that happiness on another planet if you can't find it here. And likewise, this happiness and well-being will never arise in the future unless you apply yourself to virtue and avoid negativity. Karma is infallible, and it doesn't matter if you're the richest and most powerful person in the entire world. If you disregard human nature, you do so at your own peril. Never underestimate a single human being, and certainly don't look down with disdain upon those who are less intelligent than you. Humans have great potential, and a single misguided individual can change the entire world in a profoundly negative way. And likewise, a single well-motivated individual can change the world in a profoundly positive way if they have wisdom, love, and compassion. And so do your best to overcome your negativity. Never look down on those who are less fortunate or those who are in need. That is, if in future you want to experience a better world and the infinite possibilities and potential of the creative aspect of consciousness and mind. So it's getting late, and I haven't got much more to say. So thank you for listening. And until next time, see you later.